Good evening. Today is September 21st, and you are watching the Norwood Finance Commission on Norwood Community Media. Our meeting is virtual, and you may find access to this meeting on the town's website under the calendar. This is an open meeting, and those who wish to attend are welcome. I will proceed with a roll call of the attendees for this evening. Bob Donnelly.
Here.
Judy Langone.
Here.
Kelly Newmy.
Here.
Alan Slater.
Here.
Tom McQuaid.
Here.
All of a sudden, I've lost everybody here. I apologize. Molly Ahern.
Here.
With us from the other departments are Dr. Dave Thompson.
Here.
Teresa Stewart.
Here.
Committee Chair.
Here.
Maya Bodenhofer.
Here.
Paul Riccardi.
Here.
Is there anybody? Karen Sheridan.
Here.
Is there anyone who I did not call? If so, please make yourself known so we can have all attendees accounted for. Okay, thank you. Housekeeping, if you would mute yourself until you're speaking, and that would help matters along. And raise your hand to speak, and all our votes are going to be roll call. Yes, Judy.
I just noticed on the TV, none of us show at all on the TV, so it's only voice that's coming over on the TV. But on the bottom of our screen, we see a window there, says have a great meeting. That's what's showing up on cable.
Well, I'm assuming that Brian heard that and will take care of it. All right. Thank you, Judy.
That has to do with the window that Tom McQuaid is sharing, so
Okay.
that's why.
All
So
right.
how do I?
I'm not an expert on GoToMeeting and how you share your desktop, but unshare your desktop.
I don't know how to do that.
I know in the
Whoever the meeting
past,
owner is can kick him out. Molly, is that you?
I mean, it's okay with me if we don't have us actually on the screen. It's not always flattering.
Okay, hold on. Molly, can you?
Yep, I'm just taking a peek now. So I should mute or let's see. Let's try this.
If you go to the bottom of your screen, Molly, there'll be like a little nav bar up here in the GoToMeeting opener. You'll see screen. Click that. You should be able to boot them from there, from sharing screen.
Clean the screen? I
No,
don't know.
I'm not an admin, so I can't see it.
For those folks who are tuned in, I'm sorry, we're having some technical issues, and looks like we're all set now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So we have a very busy agenda tonight, and I wanted to let's start right at the top with the acceptance of the minutes from the last meeting. But then we're going to rearrange things a little bit. We have Mr. Riccardi here from the facilities department that needs to leave us early, so we will take him next. Okay. We'll go from there. Okay. Thank you. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from August 19th? Was that the last time we met? Yeah.
So moved.
Second,
Okay. Seconded by Judy.
yep,
All righty. Alan Slater.
Yes.
Kelly Newmy.
Yes.
I'm assuming no one has any comments on this or corrections? Okay. Mr. Donnelly,
Yes.
Judy,
Yes,
and the chair is yes. Thank you. All right. Mr. Riccardi, we asked you here to sort of tell us how things were going or in the facilities department, now that you're sort of been up and running for a couple of months and as a sort of combined department. If you could just give us a little story about what's going on.
Be more than happy. So we're not sort of combined. We are combined. We were officially supposed to start July 15th,
Yeah.
but the last week of June, we were informed that the town hall cooling tower was gone, dead, not able to be repaired. So we stepped in, and by July 7th, I believe, we had a cooling tower up and running and air conditioning back on at the town hall. While we were there, the public health office has a separate unit that was not working, so we went in and repaired that. The printing shop, their central air was down, and they had actually bought window units, and we went in and got that up and running. And we also started down the police and fire department. As you know, the HVAC down there has been a major ongoing problem. But I'm happy to say that we were able to go in there and get it to a point where it is through the 6 weeks, the last 2 of July and the 4 in August that were extremely hot and humid. We did not get one phone call about how cool or how hot it was in that building. So we believe we've got a handle on it for the time being, and we're going to be putting out a study pretty soon to take a look at that whole system in there. We've also did deep cleaning of the HVAC filters and all of the coils. We did it at police and fire. We did it at the DPW to make sure the systems were running as efficiently as they possibly can, and reduce if you got dirty filters or dirty coils, the system works much harder than it has to.
Mm.
We have made the rounds to every department except for Norwood Airport. We're going down there Wednesday to introduce ourselves and set up how we operate. All the time that this was going on, we were in repairing plumbing, electrical, changing ballasts in a lot of the town buildings. We were also obviously getting the school department ready to open. So it was an extremely busy summer. From a green initiative point of view, we were able to replace 340 corridor lights, all of the corridor lights actually, at the high school, from fluorescent to LEDs. We are about to start a project inside Norwood Library, a conversion of about 70% of their lights to LEDs. And we've finalized the count of all of the lights at the police and fire department, and that will be a major conversion to all LEDs. While we were doing this, in the bays where the trucks are, where the mechanic works, they had overhead lights that hadn't been working for 3 years. Our in-house electrician was able to get those up and running. So we have been extremely busy, and I don't see it slowing down for the foreseeable future. We've also, the school department 15 years ago, joined a program called School Dude, which is a maintenance tracking system for tickets for requests. And we have got everybody onto that system on the town side, and they're all submitting work orders. The last one that we will do is the airport, and that'll happen this week. And that's gone actually pretty smooth. We're trying to respond to everything within 24 to 48 hours. We're prioritizing those requests from things that need to be right away, or things that can wait a little while. What we are finding, because for the first time, the labor is free. They're paying pots, so everyone's going, "Oh my God, we got some extra money. We can do some extra things," and everyone is asking for things, and we're doing as much as we can and keeping everybody pretty much on an even keel and happy. We are now working with the police department to do over in their interview rooms all their cameras and recording systems. And all they're gonna pay for is pots. The labor will do in-house. So we are chugging along here, and we put together a team. We hired a plumber, Stevie Eckhart, who worked for Jacobs. So that was really a transfer of funds. I mean, he was already basically in the town system. Chris Boland became the assistant director, and we hired Paul Campbell as an electrician, replacement to Chris. And Paul brings to the table not only electrical work, but he does security, fire alarms, cameras, card swipes, so that we can do a lot more in-house and eliminate vendors and paying the higher rate for the hourly rate for a vendor employee. And the DPW was nice enough to take over final grooming and lining of the athletic fields for the school department. That's a fall and a spring, which allowed us to pick up some more hours from our grounds guys to help out as basically laborers to the craftsmen. We have 2 carpenters, electrician, a plumber. Both our carpenters are also locksmiths. And then we have 3 gentlemen that are unlicensed craftsmen. They're our grounds guys that are helping out. And then, of course, we have Maureen, who keeps the whole ship running and keeps all of us guys honest. But it's been a little hectic. I mean, COVID has made it much more interesting, and there's much more demands. But it's, coming out of the chute and being 2 months into this thing, I think it's going really well. And so far, nobody's complaining, and everyone seems happy with the work that's getting done. So that's it in a nutshell.
Well, that's great to hear. Does anybody have any questions for Paul or any comments for Paul?
Ann?
Yes.
The only question I had for Paul was just, I think you've answered it, but are you with the plumber and electrician staffing up now? Are you fully staffed, or do you have some vacancies that you still need to fill?
We don't have any vacancies right now. We have an assistant for Maureen that was in the original plan that hopefully will come on board. So I guess we do have the vacancy. We'll come on board in November-ish to give a hand with her. The only other position sometime down the road in a year or two, we'd really like to look at getting our own HVAC mechanic, because you spend a lot of money contracting out to HVAC companies. And if you think about, the school department, if you take the high school out of the mix, our average age of our buildings are like 68 years old. So there's a lot of constant work on the HVAC side of the house to keep it up and running. And on the town side, we've got some newer buildings, which is good, but we have some buildings that have been neglected. The other thing I want to add is 3 Friday nights ago, we put in a team of 15 school custodians from 3 o'clock the afternoon to 10 o'clock at night in the town hall, doing the first real cleaning of that place, trying to bring it back to its old glory. And we're going to do that over a period of time. If you walk into the Savage building, you'll see the terrazzo floors. We experimented this summer. We ground them down and brought them back to life. We're going to do that with the terrazzo and marble floors on the corridors, all 3 floors of the town hall. So we're going to make some big improvements all over the town. So.
Alan?
Thank you, Ann. Paul, are you also in the process of developing long-term maintenance plans for these buildings?
We are. We're gonna slowly take a look at that, Alan. Right now, as I said, we're playing catch up for the buildings, and we want to get them up to a point where we feel comfortable, and then we'll sit down and work out our long-term strategies, both on a capital side and a continual maintenance side.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, I think Judy was next. Judy?
Yeah, Paul, thank you very much. This is exactly what I had hoped to hear because I was a big fan on the consolidation and starting up a facilities department. And I'm so glad to hear that it has paid off well so far. And that means, economy of scale. And I'm sure in the future, we'll see some savings, may not right off, but good work. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I just want to say what Chris Bowen says every time we go and introduce ourselves to any of the town departments, that he would put his team up against any public or private maintenance organization, because that's how good these guys really are. It just impresses me what they can do. So we're really happy, and we got a good team, and I think the future is going to look good for facilities for the town of Norwood.
Great. Kelly?
I just want to piggyback on what Judy said. I basically wanted to say the same thing and just say, thank you for the update. It's really great to see that the Consolidated Facility Department is working out to what everyone hoped it would be. And I look forward to seeing what the team does in the future. I also wanted to say specifically to Paul's team, thank you for all the additional work that they've taken on during COVID. I know with all the cleaning of the schools and the cleaning of the buildings that needs to happen in order for for instance, for the kids to go back to school is pretty intensive. So I wanted to thank Paul and his team for all of the extra work that they put in for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Paul, we all thank you. It's great to see that this has finally come to fruition after all these years of trying to get it done. And I'm so happy that you're in charge and you've taken charge and with your folks and have started to make things better for the town. The one question that I do have was there anything, I know what went into those meetings about the facilities being put together from both the schools and the general government side. And I know that everybody on that committee, which was, I don't want to leave people's names off, so I won't go through names, but that whole study committee, was there anything that came up that was not expected? Did we?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I got to give Dave Hajar a compliment because he did a tremendous amount of work in studying and collecting information and putting it out on the table to help this thing get off the ground. So there's been so far no real surprises. I hope you haven't cursed us, but there's been no surprises.
I hope so too. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. If no one else has any questions, then you can go off to do what you need to get done tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Let's go to the school committee and go over the information that Karen has sent us and what we have there, folks.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm not sure if they were going to put them up on the screen or do you want me to just go over the information that I have?
So Molly, can you give the screen to Karen so she can pull up her files?
I don't have them here. Sorry. I thought they were being pulled up there.
Okay. Well, you can try sharing with me again. See if I can. Something didn't work last time, but.
Or I could do it.
Oh, okay.
What do you want, Karen? You want the narrative, or do you want the spreadsheet?
Just the spreadsheet. I have the notes here, so people can see. So I can start while he's
Well,
bringing.
give us the Dr. Thompson. Great.
Yep, I just switched it over.
I can start while he's getting that together here.
Okay.
So with the hybrid and remote learning models that the district has had to develop due to the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, additional costs are being incurred. These costs will need to be continually monitored as it's ever changing. And anybody who works in a municipality and a school district will tell you that these are uncharted territories. We're all working at an extremely fast pace. It's a very high stress level that none of us have seen before. I myself would like to thank and commend all the employees at the school who are working extremely hard. And they're so diligent in the pursuit of the common goal, which is the education of our children. My staff's just been working really hard, and I just wanted to thank them. We can get that up. The first thing was
not going to let me do it. So
I can go over it. At the town meeting, the school agreed to hold back $300,000 until the October meeting due to the questionable circumstances from the funding due to the COVID-19. I did give you the list of those expenditures that we're holding back. There's a mental health consultant, which was $232,688. There's a mental health crisis interventionist at the high school we're holding back, and that is $57,312. And then we're holding back about $10,000 from the school late bus. So those are the expenditures that we're holding back till the October town meeting. I also have given you a grant update in your packet. Again, here I wanted to say thanks to, we've got a new grant writer this year, Patricia Bortek, and she's been doing a wonderful job. And we've also got Beverly Boudreau and Rhonda Budgeon, who've been working as a team. I've been working with them to learn how to do more grant management. So to have a little bit more oversight into the grants, the monitor of the expenditures, they're working on the revenue of expenditures. We're going to be having one girl is going to, Beverly is going to be handling all the expenditures and the revenue to the grants, and then Rhonda will kind of be overseeing it. Both of them will both know how to do the end of year reports, to request the funds. So we're improving the internal controls with regard to the grants. And that was, I felt was something that was much needed. And I'm very excited that we've got the three, Patty, Beverly, and Rhonda, all working in that area. As I told you, it's an ever-changing situation that's going on right now. So I had indicated to you in my notes that there were 5 grants that have been approved for FY21. But today, all the title grants, 1, 2, 3, and 4 got approved. So now we have 9 grants that have already been approved for the FY21. There's also 2 SPED grants that I indicated to you that were going to be submitted shortly, and those 2 grants were submitted today. They probably should take a couple of weeks to get those back. The Cvrf grant, which is one of the CARES grants, that one I got notification from the Department of Ed that we'll probably see that being approved by next week. But the Cvrf grant is one grant that you can start spending earlier than you get that approval on, because you can move some stuff from the general fund to that grant. So we have started spending some mostly technology on that grant that would be moved over to that grant once it's approved. So the total grants to date for FY21 that we've just got approved is $1,071,716. And with those 2 SPED grants that were just submitted today, that will bring the total grants to $2,106,482. So we've got it doing pretty good in the grant department. I did give you an accounting of the different expenditures that each grant has in it. So you can go through it and you'll see, that the staff that positions that were in there, the technology that's in there, some of the contracted services that in there. A couple of the grants also have expenditures that St. Catherine is allowed to have. So St. Catherine's, the private school, also has some grant funding. We manage and monitor the grants for them, but they are allowed to get some of our grant money for that school. So they do have some funds as well. And you'll see in the descriptions that it will say St. Catherine's for all of their expenditures and the grants. So does anybody have any questions on the grants before I move on to the additional cost for the hybrid?
Kelly?
Kelly?
Sorry about that. Why
That's
is it that we have, obviously as a private school, St. Catherine's should technically be its own entity and have its own administration staff that administers its accounting. Is there a reason why we have to do this on their behalf since they're a private school and take tuition in order to fund their education system?
It's been like that. That's how the federal grants are. They have an equitable share in some of our grants. So they have that option to accept that equitable share of the grants. They've made a few years back, the Department of Ed changed it. So we have to monitor and all those expenditures have to go through the school for them. And that we're not allowed to send the money to them. We have to monitor it and the expenditures come through our system, but they are allowed to have their share. Some years they don't accept the money. This year they did accept the money. So this year they are using their equitable share. There's only a couple of grants.
And there's no charge back to them for the administrative services that we do on their behalf?
No, that's just the way the grants are, that they get an equitable share. There's a formula based on it, on the percentage of how they get. I'd have to do a little bit more research if you wanted more on how the formula is on that.
I'm just curious why, state tax dollars or local tax dollars that go into public education end up funding a private school. That doesn't really make much sense to me. But if that's the way the law works, that's the way the law works.
These are federal
funds.
tax dollars. So, as does some of our Title I money as well, and Title II money goes through St. Catherine's.
Right. I kind of think of it a little bit because of the same with the transportation. The transportation for St. Catherine's would be similar.
It still doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I get the money, but there's an administrative cost to administering those grants. And it doesn't make sense that our public tax dollars that pay for our public education system are going to fund at a private school that has its own tuition structure and really doesn't have to even follow the same guidelines that the public school does. We have no jurisdiction over them. So it just seems a little backwards to me. I mean, a private school to me should be solely funded. Tax dollars should go solely to support the public school.
Right.
Okay.
Well, these are the federal grants that they get the equitable share in.
It's fair. There's still a cost of you administering it. That's my point.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
There's a cost to that.
If you want to do something about it, talk to your congressman or someone. Okay.
I shall do that. And I wasn't aware that was the case. I know it was with some things. It just seems backwards to me, but that's fine.
All righty. I have a question for you, Karen. Karen,
Okay.
when we get approved for this, how does the money come in? And when?
Okay. For the first payment is usually an automatic payment. They give you a percentage of the grant. But then after that, what it is each month there's a window open and you have to request your funds. So what you do is you look to see what you've spent for that grant, and then what you're going to spend, what you're expecting to spend in the next 30 days. So that's the amount of money that you would request. So that's why when I've got the two girls that I'm training right now, because there is a little bit of a procedure that you go through to figure out how much money you want to request in those funds. So each month, like I say, you have to look to see, what did you spend? What am I going to spend in the next 30 days? And then how much have I gotten already? And then you figure out how much you're going to request. And then it will come into this town, just like the Chapter 70 money comes in. So then Mark Good would get which grant it is and allocate it to the proper grant account.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions so far on this? No? Okay. All right, Karen, you can continue.
Okay, so next we're going to move over to additional costs for the hybrid and the remote. So again, I stress this is it's ever changing. I'm monitoring it. Right now, there's lots of paperwork flying through our office, especially with regard to the hiring. So currently, let me get to my thing. The district is anticipating initial costs in the amount of $1,440,261,000. The additional costs were, we have 2 instructional tech specialists. We've got 3 special education teachers, 17 elementary teachers, 2 paraprofessionals, 1 high school SPED teacher, and 1 high school ELL teacher. We've got an increase in full-time equivalency staff of 1.6, and we're adding an assistant to the director of pupil services. The increase of the full-time equivalencies to the current staff is, for example, there might have been a 0.6 that they increased to a 1.0, or a 0.8 that they increased to a 1.0 for this particular year. We had some budget flexibility to help us cover these costs, and the budget flexibility was we have put $250,000 of the curriculum refresh on hold. We have taken another $100,000 as an offset from the bus revolving fund account. The circuit breaker, we have increased the offset for the circuit breaker to an additional $500,000. We have a decrease in expenditures, and some of these expenditures that we shift to some of these additional grants that we got this year, and that equaled about $275,000. We've got the high school PACS teacher on hold for this year, and we've also got a budget transfer from the summer paraprofessionals of $27,500 because we didn't use all that money in that account. The decrease in the expenditures, I wanted to give you a little idea what that was. We had some district-wide software that we shifted to one of the grants. I believe it was the ESSER CARE grants. We also had some hardware devices that we shifted to the grant. We had the Ingenuity online contracted service in the amount of $100,000. I believe that's being used by the high school. That was also shifted to the grants. The school committee travel reimbursement of $2,500 is on hold for this year. And again, transportation of the late bus on hold, another $26,000. So with all of that budget flexibility, we're over budget at this moment by about $230,393. The other, if you look at the circuit breaker, I did give you the final circuit breaker for FY20, so you could see that we were under budget in the circuit breaker, which allowed us to feel comfortable in adding another $500,000 of the offset for circuit breaker. I'd like to stress that the reasoning for being under budget wasn't that there was a lot of SPED tuition that was paid out. It was just that there was other expenditures that we had in the budget that were less, so we did not have to use all that money on the circuit breaker. We did still, even during the COVID-19, you still did have to pay a lot of these private schools their tuition because they were teaching the students just like the regular ed public school were teaching the students. I just wanted to stress that there hasn't been a decrease in the SPED out of district students. So that is my report. If anybody has any questions, I'll gladly answer some of them.
Okay,
No?
Kelly's got her hand up first.
Is there any update on the Equal Opportunity, Opportunities Act that with the additional funding, and if that's going to come through?
So is that what you mean? Student Opportunities Act?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Dave would have more information on that. Yeah.
Yeah, there is no update. They have now pushed the presentation or delivery of the plan to January. So we're on a indefinite hold. So we'll see if that changes.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. How is that? How do you plan around that? I mean, obviously we have to have our budget in, right? And they're not giving you any information. How do you plan around that?
Well, technically we don't have to, do the plan because we haven't had to submit it.
Okay.
Which is, I mean, it's just a situation of the COVID situation we're in. It was a designed plan to really hit an underperforming group in our district, which is special education. It's work that needs to be done. We are doing some of the work through other means. There's training going on this November that we are going to do that was along the line that we were going. So we're still going to do some of the work moving forward and be in a position where we can do more of the work when the chance comes, but because it's important work. But we're on indefinite hold, and the reality is with the COVID-19 situation that we're in, it's pretty fluid right now, and that is probably more than enough.
Okay. Bob Donnelly?
Just the additional cost for the hybrid of 1.4. The staffing numbers that we were on the chart does that include, are any of the staff coming on board under this model going to be benefits eligible?
The way they're doing it this year is they're bringing everybody in as a long-term sub for 1 year. So their level of pay would be either at the step one of the bachelor's or step one at the master's, depending on their education, but they would be benefit eligible if they're over the 20 hours.
Okay.
Right. And just to follow up on that, I did give Tony numbers of the new FTEs. There are several on here which are not new. The assistant director to pupil services is not a new FTE because that actually is kind of replacing a position that we had at the high school for a year. But they would be benefit eligible, a considerable amount of them. We are trying to hire them as long-term subs to save a little bit on the salary piece. How many actually use, would be an ongoing piece that we're looking at. But I want to say, and I did not bring that piece of paper home with me, and I closed a bunch of windows and I had it open and I didn't save it. So I want to say about 23-ish. And that's counting all of them. The 1.6, those are people that are already in our system and either are or are not taking benefits. That's not a 1.6 additional people, if you will. That's just increasing their time with us to fill in the needs and to kind of explain it.
Dr. Thompson, can you see this screen I have up?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's the FTEs. Tony sent me this summary after talking to you, I think.
Right. Yeah. So 24. What did I say? 23. Pretty good up there.
Yeah,
pretty good memory. Yeah. So that's so we had a conversation about that about a week and a half ago, so that he could put this together for you folks.
So he's basically estimating that it's going to cost us an additional $25,000 in Medicare, $294,000 in health insurance, $25,000 in unemployment, $20,000 in workers' comp, and $1,000 for life insurance.
So that would mean that in addition to the 1.4 that we've already talked about, that we do have some additional costs that are listed here that we need to find a resolution for as well in order to provide the schools with what they ultimately need in terms of resources for the hybrid and remote models, if I'm reading this correctly.
Yeah, the only thing I don't understand is it says total appropriation 815. It doesn't appear to add up to any of those numbers, so I'm not sure of that. I think on Karen's page, I think they were asking for the town for $230,000. Is that right, Dr. Thompson?
Right, but that's salary. That isn't that we don't normally calculate benefits. So,
Right, so, but I mean,
Can I-
if you take,
But can I say one thing though, because this was the estimate and that was before we did all the hiring. So I'm waiting for all the hiring to be complete so I can get you an actual on, because if there's more people that are masters, more people that were bachelors, and that paperwork, I was not able to get that to you tonight because there's, like I say, the hiring has been very quick, very fast paced, and it clearly showed that we need some extra staff in the business office because it's
right,
been
but
really.
for instance, of the $1.4 million, the schools have been able to come up with either from grants or delayed programs, $1.2 million. So in this model, they're asking for 230, maybe it's 100,000 more when Karen gets the numbers. So that's 230 on that page. And then if you look at this other page, I mean, it appears to me to be, call that 3.25, maybe 400,000 more here. So 400 and 300. So I don't know where the 815 comes from, but it seems like it's well under $1 million.
So the additional monies that needs, the gap that needs to be addressed would be the 230 that the schools indicated, plus the, well, let's say it's about $400,000 worth of Medicare health insurance, unemployment, so forth. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 600,000 remains to be resolved to fully fund the remote and hybrid programs, if I'm reading this correctly.
Right, I agree. I'm not sure where the 815 comes from, but.
And again, I'd like just want to make sure that everybody knows that that's the estimate as of today, but more actuals be when all the hiring is complete and all the paperwork settles.
Yeah, good to know. And I think everybody's going to realize that the numbers are going to fluctuate a little bit. And I think as subsequent meetings we'll have harder numbers to in hand to look at and to resolve at the appropriate time. But this is good. Thank you.
Okay, 1 sec, for 1 minute. I'm just going to ask one question, and then I'll go to you, Alan. I think you were next. And then Judy, if you have a question. Tom, the monies that we're talking about, will they be, any of this be covered by either state or federal funds eventually, do you think?
No.
Well, I wanted to hear yes. And did you want to think about it? No?
No.
No? All right.
I don't see that there's any federal or state money for this.
For this, okay. All right. So, and that leads me to my second question, which is something that I've been thinking about all day, is when we're looking at this, quite often we have used some of our healthcare money to pay or to add to our OPEB fund. And apparently that won't be here now for this year.
Well, it may or may not. For instance, let's say we appropriated an additional $294,000 for health insurance based on this schedule. Ordinarily, whenever we have an appropriation, we have had money left over at the end of the year, and we have contributed to OPEB. So I would expect if we make this additional appropriation, then we might still have money left over for healthcare to put into OPEB.
Okay, and these appropriations would come, I'm sorry, folks, these appropriations would come from free cash?
That's the only source I know of.
Okay, all right. Alan, you were next, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ann. Couple of questions. First is to Tom. Some of these added expenses we're going to have, for Medicare and unemployment and health insurance, et cetera. Do we have to take action at a fall town meeting, or can we simply wait until the spring town meeting, see what the real numbers are, and then take any action there as appropriate to make things whole if that's what's necessary?
Well, if we had Yeah, I mean, we could ignore all these things. Yeah, we could ignore them and then come up with it later. But, you know, I think you should anticipate some of these. So you have a better knowledge of what do you have left in free cash for other things.
Yeah, no, I mean, the point wasn't to ignore them. I mean, we know we have them, but the fact is when we do estimates for some of these things, you know, such as the health insurance, et cetera, they're always, you know, estimates. They're, you know, good estimates, but, you know, they're never to the dollar. So, you know, if you waited until the spring, I mean, potentially you'd have a better idea and a better handle what that number is. But, you know, if the decision is to go in the fall, then that's fine.
Well, if you go back to this, schedule, and let's assume that after Karen gets all the numbers, that this 230,000 is a net of 400,000. So this you would have to appropriate. My recommendation would be that you would appropriate it into as one number, because so that the school committee understands that when COVID goes away, this money goes away as well, right? I mean, that's the whole purpose of adding these amounts.
Yeah.
But as far as the other page, you would not have to appropriate these right away. Although I think if you were adding the employees, you should definitely add the Medicare. Because we definitely have to pay the tax. There's no question about that. And you might want to take a number less than 294,000, appropriate some now, and then figure out the balance later.
Okay.
We probably could get a good estimate of the health insurance costs once we get the lists of the actual hires. The difference for me is how many were really bachelors, how many were really masters. And then the other is there are some people that are able to do the 12 weeks leave of absences, you know, due to different COVID related things. Example would be daycare and things like that. And then once the hiring is done, I think we can get a real good idea of what the total cost for the health insurance is. I don't think it would take much longer. It's just right now, we're just trying to get those lists together and get an accurate read for you.
Okay. And
Judy? I'm sorry.
Yeah, could I talk a little bit about mechanics here? When is the town meeting scheduled for, Tom?
I've recommended November 15th.
November 15th. So technically right now, we cannot use any free cash because that's part of getting certified by the Department of Revenue.
Correct.
So where are we in getting the certification? Are you kind of close to doing that to get?
No, we're just starting. We just closed the books a week ago Friday. So it's going to take some time to get it. They did make a special exception this year that allows, we just have to fill out a schedule, but it does allow us to appropriate from the free cash that was remaining at the end of last year, which I believe is approximately $2.7 million. Usually that kind of disappears into space, but I think they are going to. So I think if for some reason they get delayed processing free cash in total, we would still have about $2.7 or $3 million that we could use, which actually probably is all that or maybe more than we need to use.
Right. It sounds like that. But I guess I'll ask the school committee and you, Tom, do we need the money before we have a town meeting? And if we do, how would we go about that?
There's no way to appropriate before town meeting.
So therefore, nothing is available. Suck it up and take it out of the current budget, whatever you have to do to cover those additional expenses.
Yes.
I mean, I think we'd be okay doing that because, you know, all your payroll expenditures aren't going to be occurring right at the beginning. So you've got the whole year. So I think
Well, that's true. I mean, you will have money there to move around. And hopefully when we get the appropriation, you can slot it back into the appropriate accounts.
Okay.
I'm trying to, I set up accounts so that all these one-year positions are in a long-term sub-account so that they're pretty much, they'll stick out as who are the ones that are the 1 years and those costs. So,
Okay. Judy, can I ask you to hold for a second because you hopped in and Alan had one more question that he wanted to ask. So go ahead, Alan.
Sorry.
Thank you. Before I get to the question, I'd just like to thank Karen and the school budget subcommittee for all the hard work they put in. You know, I think this summary is excellent. I think it's straightforward. Clearly, a lot of thought was put into this, and I certainly would have no problem supporting this at a fall town meeting. My question for Karen is it safe to say that you were much more aggressive in going after grants than the system has been in the past? Because it seems as if, you know, with the new grant writing person and the new emphasis, that you seem to be bringing more money in. Is that a fair statement? At
well,
least you've been bringing more money.
There's been several new grants that have come in due to the COVID-19. So that's one of the things. But another thing I say, I've seen such a vast improvement in the last even month because we've got we're starting to get a handle on grants and to really have that internal control on it and to be able to, in order to, when you have the internal control on the grants, then you're really spending your grants. I've just seen a vast improvement where now I've got 2 people that I'm trying that are going to be learning grants. And that's what my goal is, to have at least 2 people knowing every aspect of the business department. So it's been, and Patty's been wonderful. I worked extremely well with Patty. So her and I have, as soon as she pops a grant in to be submitted, then I'm on the other end trying to get those accounts set up and get those accounts in the system really quickly so they can start spending it really quickly. And the biggest thing for me, and Tom can probably vouch for this, and Molly, is to expend it in the proper account, because that has been your problem here, is a lot of it has been in the wrong account. So we're trying to start right from the beginning of that grant, get it all in the right account and monitor them so that we don't have all these errors going through. So I've just seen a great improvement in that. The other side is I've got another girl training on payroll. So I'm hoping to do the same with payroll. There's going to be 2 people doing payroll. And then my next thing is try to get 2 people that know HR. So that's my goal, is to have backups. If one person's out sick in that department, when I first got here, there's nobody to do the job. So it's like, I need the backup. I need the internal control. So with the very large payroll of the first school year, there was always just the one payroll girl. And I've done payroll in my past, and that's really tough having one person do that payroll. So
Okay.
I've seen a lot of improvements.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Dave Thompson has been trying to get in to say something here too.
Yeah,
And then we'll go to Judy.
I just want to follow up on a couple things. First off, we started getting very aggressive with grants about 2 years ago. Most of those that were coming out were for specific programs, and around the career center programming and that we started in several other technology grants. This summer, it seemed like every week there was a grant that was coming out. We were very aggressive with that. Our process has improved with some new people and the internal controls that Karen spoke about. But the aggressiveness was preceding Karen, but the process is a heck of a lot better now. So thank you for noting.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Now, can we go back to Judy? Okay, Judy, do you want to continue?
I think I've said all I'm going to say right now, but thank you, Karen, the school committee, Dr. Thompson. This is wonderful data that we're getting. Really appreciate it. It helps us make our decisions, and I too will support whatever it's going to take to make sure that you get the money you need in order to get our kids through school. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bob, you're going to have to wait a second. Kelly had her hand up first. Kelly, go
Oh, it's
ahead.
like a dog fight in here.
I'm telling you.
So this is just I just saw, like, Bob just gave me the hand there. I saw it in the camera.
Yeah.
All right. So one quick question. So two things, actually. One question. So I know there are a series of teachers. I know people are eligible for the 12-week COVID relief fund. I get that. But I know there is a series of teachers that are taking leave of absences. Has that been calculated into the budget? Because I don't think we would be, even if we are obligated to their benefits, we wouldn't be obligated to their salary. Is that correct?
It depends on the situation.
Yep.
So there's some people that are on leave of absences that get, say, for example, the 12 weeks. There's some people that are getting, with their situation, would not get any salary. It depends on the situation.
So I don't care about the situation. I just care if that money's been factored into the budget. I don't care what each individual teacher's situation is, but we wouldn't be obligated to that money. So when we're saying we need X amount of money for teachers, does that include the deduction of the money we're not going to pay for the teachers who aren't teaching this year?
Dave, I believe in it. This included that the teachers that weren't teaching, that are on leave of absences, this total number of extra staff included that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, awesome. I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing that. And then the second thing I just wanted to say, which I had said to Dr. Thompson before the meeting started, but I just wanted to say thank you to everyone within the school system for just a great kickoff to the school year and a really amazing first couple days of school. The online program that they put together is top notch. I can't tell you how surprised I was at how engaging it was and how different it was from the spring and how consistent it was across the district with all the different parents I talked to. So I just wanted to say thank you for all the time and effort that the school committee, Dr. Thompson, Karen, and everyone within the school system has put into that program, because I can tell you that the difference is light and day, and I was just so pleasantly surprised by it. So thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to follow that up by complimenting the professionalism of our teachers and how hard they have worked to learn rapidly. And we're still learning, and we're still going to keep working. But I have to compliment their professionalism. Thank you,
Mr. Donnelly.
So my two questions. One, Karen, in terms of the estimates, are they when you're estimating salaries, are they a 12-month annualized cost, or were you kind of just looking for X number of months for funding or estimating the funding?
These are the full year costs.
Full year cost.
That you have
So
there,
in
yeah.
reality, in FY21, they're probably going to be spending less than that amount because they're not going to be working 12 months, basically.
Right. If there's any prorated, that will also change it a little bit.
Okay, that's good. And for Dr. Dave, in terms of timing, just out of curiosity, how long would it take you to staff up to the 24 folks? When would you? That seems like quite a lot of work to do. But I'm just.
well, yeah, this is part of why Karen's office is backlogged. So they've got stacks of paper. In fact, Karen's doing gymnastics, jumping over the stacks of paper. I'm just joking here, but basically, out of those 24 positions, new positions we're talking about, we probably have 20 of them already on board. So we are really close to having all. Some of the other people are support people at this point, but I expect by the end of this week we will have those as well. Very aggressive work by both our principals, Dr. Wyeth, to find people to work for us. And we were all, every school system was out there competing for people. We're lucky in that we had a lot of our paraprofessionals who were certified teachers step up into those ranks, which is actually pretty good because they already have experience in the system. And now we need to put together an ongoing program to support those folks that are joining us and onboard them. So that is the next plan. Every time we turn a corner, there's a new plan and a new challenge. So we're not getting bored.
Yeah, I just want to echo what other members have said, and just my compliments to your staff, Dr. Thompson, as well as the school committee for and this was no easy task, and it remains a very tough task to achieve, but you've really done an outstanding job as school committee members and leaders and administrators. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so where are we now? Karen, are you, is this everything? Yeah?
That was the only other thing I wanted to tell you was I did talk to Rob O'Donnell at Department of Ed, and they still have no circuit breaker updates. So we're still have no information on that.
Okay, all right. Anything else, full committee wise here? Are we done with the school committee? I don't believe that. This is insane. Okay.
Let them go home now.
Okay.
All right, I can go to dinner now.
Yes, you can. Thank
All right.
you very much for
They're all
all
already
of your hard work. I really appreciate it. We all appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. So, Mr. McQuaid, can we talk about the fall special next? And can you give us an idea of when it's going to be and what we're going to see on it? How are you handling it, I guess, is what we're looking for.
Well, I recommended November 15th because, could run a couple of nights. And then we have to have a tax hearing in the first week in December to set the tax rate. So, but I wanted it to be, middle of November to give Division of Local Services time to certify free cash. So that's kind of the target date that we have. As far as I know, the local aid is going to be level funded from the last year. So we have $1.5 million more in the budget than we're probably going to get. And then, the big question is whether the state's going to let us. Usually, what they let us do is take 100% of what actually came in the previous fiscal year. So the previous fiscal year is the year that just ended June 30th. So, but for instance, we only had March, April, May, and June of really low hotel motel tax. So that means they had 8 months of normal revenue in there. And I don't know whether they're going to let us take 100% of that number and carry it for next year. They may say, well, we think it's going to be, half. So if that's the case, instead of coming up with $1.5 million, we have to figure out where to get. We might have $2 million to get someplace. And so I know Mr. Mizuko's recommendation is that we leave the budget, the budget expenditures the way they are, and then take the difference out of free cash for both this year and if we have the same ongoing thing for the fiscal 22 budget that we're going to start looking at in December or January.
Okay. Now, first of all, Mr. Plasko, you raised your hand. And is this regarding what Tom has had to say, or otherwise? I think Alan has a question for Tom.
I was just going to make a minor correction on the date of town meeting. We haven't actually set it yet. I believe we'll discuss this at our next meeting on the 29th of this month. And we're looking at calling it to begin on Thursday, the 12th. Actually, the 15th is a Sunday. But we're looking at trying to provide at least 4 days before Thanksgiving. So that would be the 12th, the 16th, the 19th, and the 23rd. Those dates have already been reserved with the schools for the gymnasium again. We have to confirm that also with the moderator, as it's not official yet. But it likely will start more towards the 12th and later the 15th or after.
Okay, thank
Great.
you. Alan.
Thank you, Ann. Just a question to Tom. From your discussion of, Tony's preferences, if you recall, at the spring town meeting, the annual town meeting, we voted a full budget, but we took some provisions on certain items that if we don't get as much money as we anticipate, that we're not going to spend them. Things such as putting money into stabilization, putting additional money into roads, et cetera, et cetera. So are you saying that Tony now feels that we should simply spend that money regardless?
Well, I have a little different view of what we said at the original town meeting. We said management won't put the additional 500,000 into the pension until December 1st. Won't do it before that, and may not do it at all. Didn't say that in the motion, but so that thing, the $700,000 that's going into the school override fund, 428, these are off the top of my head, 428,000 is going into the stabilization fund. So those are things that if we decided to, quote, cut the budget from what was originally, we could do that. We could without, and that therefore we wouldn't need to use free cash if we cut those things. But his thinking now is that the free cash number probably is going to be pretty good. So if that's the case, it's to our long-term advantage to fund the extra money in the pension, and it's best to have it put aside for the school override funds, because we know at some time that's going to start reversing and costs are going to accumulate faster, and we're going to start digging into that fund rather than taking it out, and also to build up our reserves still with funding stabilization. So that's what he's recommending, because some of it will depend on what free cash comes in and what DLS allows us to use. But if I use the budget that the local receipts that we have for non-utilities, even though we took a big hit on hotel, motel, et cetera, not counting local aid, we'd be short $84,000. If I took 100% of everything that came in fiscal 20 and then moved it over to the budget, compared to what we did in the original budget, we're only $84,000 short. So you could add that to your estimated receipts for the light department to balance that. But like I said, if DLS says, well, we're not going to let you be that aggressive on hotel motel because we think that's going to still be really flat for the whole fiscal year, then we would have to make up that money as well.
Well, I think that given all the uncertainties that we have, I think we should take a hard look as to what we're actually going to be spending, because we made the votes that we did, we took the positions that we did in the spring with the understanding that if we don't get as much as we expect, either from state aid or local receipts or both, we had options. Simply because we have free cash is no reason to spend free cash. We have, I don't want to repeat myself, but I will. We have a lot of uncertainties there. And I would just as soon try to keep our free cash numbers as high as they reasonably can. And if there are things that in a perfect world, we'd certainly be willing to do, if the things that we don't have to do, it doesn't really hurt us for 1 year if we don't do them, then maybe that's the position we should take. And I think that when we get the warrant for the special town meeting, that we should take a very hard look at what we think should be spent and what we think shouldn't be spent.
Okay. Judy, did you have something?
Well, I agree with Alan, but I still think we're a little early. We don't have the certified free cash, but I do think we have to be conservative. And I'd like to spend it all, but that was appropriated. Now, Tom, we did what, a 90% on the receipts for this year's budget?
We did.
So if we were able to bump them up to 100, that's where we would pick up quite a bit of cash, right?
No, because we actually came in at 90 because of the reduced things.
So the bottom line average is 90, isn't 100,
Yeah.
right?
All
Okay.
things considered, right?
Okay, I didn't realize that.
$4,000, I think it is short of what we projected at 90. So we thought we
Oh,
were
you
being
did
really
say that.
conservative,
Okay.
90, and then COVID happened and it made us 90.
And that little subcommittee we had before town meeting had put us down to 85%. So, you know, with the revisions that we had made to the budget. So it was probably just as well we did that. Tom, speaking about all of this, there's a couple of things. We've got deadlines. You have deadlines. And are you going to be able to make the deadlines for all of the information that you have to get into the state? And now I know that there's another thing that has to go back to the federal government, I think by the end of September. Are you all set with these things? Can you make these deadlines?
Well, the auditors are the ones who submit our application for free cash. So really kind of depends on how long it takes them. We were about 3 weeks later than usual, closing the year end due to our learning curve with the new accounting system, Munis. So we're a little bit behind what we usually are, and but usually, I'm fairly confident that we'll have the number, and I'm 100% confident that we can spend what was left at the end of last year, which I think will be more than enough. I understand Alan's suggesting not necessarily spending it all, like for instance, we could eliminate the $700,000 that goes into the school fund and leave it in free cash. But to me, whether it's in the free cash or the school fund, it's still our money and it's still accessible. The only one that would be a real, if you want to call it a savings, is the extra pension money. Because if you look at it in the short term, we don't have to spend that. So we could have that in free cash. That would be a real, the other ones, if we don't do them, it's either in stabilization or free cash. So, or it's either in the school, school fund or free cash. So the pension's the only one, and long term, that'll hurt us, right? Because it was our way to try to keep up with the 2029 funding schedule, because you may recall we had a big favorable OPEB number, and the reason it was so good this year is because the actuary assumed that all the excess money we're putting into the pension, if it was fully funded in 2029, would then go to OPEB. So, I just recently saw the funding schedules, potential funding schedules to stay on 2029, and it's $1.5 million increase over what we pay now. So we can let it slip like other cities and towns are doing. If you look at the funding schedule, we're at 79 or 80% funded. Some systems are in the 40s. And so we know PERAC is going to let, they've already let some towns go out to 2040. But, you're just putting off the inevitable. And so I'm recommending that we actually, go with the $1.5 million increase into the pension fund. So if we fund this $500,000 this year, we're already, kind of upping our own levels so that the increase the next year would only be $1 million rather than $1.5 million of kind of mandatory.
Okay. All right. Bob, Donley, and then Kelly.
The 2 points. Tom, I think when you're talking about the school fund, the 700,000, that you're referencing the override stabilization fund.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't find the words.
All right. And back in the spring, we paused spending on those items. I think they totaled about 1.6 million. If they need to be funded, if we determine that they need to be taken off pause, the whatever monies that we are going to use to pay for them would have to be subject to a town meeting vote. Like, for example, an appropriation vote. If we were to appropriate them from a source such as free cash, we will need to vote on them. The town meeting would need to vote on them one by one. I correct, and that's my assumption that we would.
Well, actually, mechanically, I'm not sure, because if you think about it, other than free cash, we don't vote on revenue, right? At town meeting,
Mhm.
you know, we make a schedule. We say these are the revenues we think we're going to get, and now we think we're going to get $1.5 million less of revenues. So we don't really have to make an appropriation on the budget expense side if we leave it the way it is, but we do have to kind of, you know, I don't know how mechanically we'd do it. We'd need advice. You know, would have to, something before that we thought was going to come from revenue, now it's going to come from free cash. We just have to find out from DLS, how do we make that motion? But the other alternative is, you know, you could make none of those contributions and, you know, reduce the appropriation and not take it out of free cash, or some combination thereof.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Kelly?
So I just wanted to take a moment just to say I completely agree with Alan on, you know, being cautious about this. I mean, if my car's broken and I need a new car, but I don't have the money to spend it right now, or I know next year something catastrophic is going to happen, I'm going to lose my job, I'm probably not going to buy that car until I know that my financial situation is solvent enough where I can afford that car. So I understand that it puts us behind the 8 ball, but I get that, and I understand that it has impacts. But what I would hate to do is to see us spend all this money and then next year, because things come in much worse, depending on what happens with this virus and a vaccine and all that stuff, and we end up having to have difficult conversations about cutting significant programs because we spent this money in advance. My feeling is we could always double up next year if we wanted to, and pay twice as much if we wanted to, if we had that extra money. But I definitely agree with both Alan and Judy that we should be extremely cautious with what we're doing. And these things that are optional but good really should be on the table for things that we might want to hold off on.
The other thing to consider is if you have when unions negotiate, one of the things they ask as far as how much money is in free cash, because they think, oh, free cash is extra money that, you know, should be in our contracts. So if you're building up reserves, that's one factor and reason to put them into long-term reserves rather than short-term reserves. So therefore, or like the school stabilization fund and the regular stabilization fund. So that's just one little factor.
I have a question here. Tom, or kind of a statement. I spent quite a bit of time reading the DLS bulletins over the weekend, and I did come across, and it reminded me, I'd read this before, that if we need to, we can spread out some of these costs over 3 years, or as we did several years ago with snow and ice, basically is how they explained it. So that is also another option. I mean, we're talking, we have to see all of the numbers before us before we make any kind of decisions, but that too could be on the table if we want to be conservative and make sure that, you know, we have enough money to spend over the time frame of several years, if we really want to be cautious.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that carryover up to 3 years related to money you spent in excess because of COVID?
Yes.
So if you actually incurred a COVID deficit, I don't think we plan on having a deficit because of COVID.
You think
Because-
everything will be covered?
Well, we have $2.5 million in total over 2 years from the CARES Act to cover COVID. So far we've spent, I think, $1.1 million, something like that.
Okay. All right. All right. Go ahead, Alan.
Thank you, Ann. I mean, we've, been talking about the problem, and what we really need in the end, will be a proposal with some hard numbers and to see what this really means. Again, my concern is simply because we have free cash today isn't a reason to spend it. And I think, as Kelly correctly pointed out, that it's great to spend money now, but what happens down the road when, we have even less money, we have even greater expenses, whether it's general government or the schools or issues related to COVID, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and the money isn't there. It's not simply a matter of saving money for the sake of saving money. I think we should be very conservative of what we spend until we have a real clear indication and feel confident in what our future financial situation is going to be, so we don't get caught short in future years.
So if you're talking about potentially cutting actual cost, then one thing you should do is consider not coming up with the extra money for the schools, right? Because you're committing more money to the schools and before you even talk about whether you want to cut costs. So
I think what we were talking about,
it's going to have, I'm going to tell you that if you're proposing to cut costs, the proposal is going to have to come from the FinCom, because I don't believe management thinks that we need to cut costs. Because then we're cutting services.
My proposal was not to cut costs. My proposal was consistent with what we thought we had voted on and thought that we had accepted at the Springtown meeting, that there are certain expenses that we decided to defer subject to our financial situation. Those are the kinds of things that we're talking about, the money for the override stabilization fund, the money for the regular stabilization fund, the money for roads, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the types of things which, as we always used to call it in the FinCom, and from your days in the FinCom, Tom, the nice to haves. You have to differentiate between the nice to haves and the have to haves. And if we don't feel comfortable with our financial situation, then maybe we shouldn't do some of these nice to haves. That's my only point.
Yeah, the capital plan is still being talked about. They're meeting soon, and that's one that is a major expenditure. Whether we use free cash, borrow, do it all, So I think, if you have concerns in that area, perhaps people should attend the capital outlay meeting that's coming up.
Do you know when it is?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Bob?
No, I don't know exactly. I think they're floating several dates, and I'm not sure which one they've landed on for the meeting.
Okay. Yes, Judy.
Yes, there's many moving parts here, and a lot of them we don't have enough information. Philosophically, I think the FinCom believes, to be conservative, but we need more information before we can make any decision. I'm sure all of us will be meeting and talking with people, and I don't know if this is putting Bill on the spot, but Bill, could you comment on some of this?
I'm sorry, I was trying to verify a date. Did you ask me a question?
Yeah, I was just saying that there are a number of moving parts here. There's consequences if you do X or Y or whatever. And there has to be obviously a discussion with all the parties involved. You being here, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but could you comment on some of the conversation that just took place?
Well, my comments would be, I think it's premature. I think a couple of you, while you've expressed some philosophical feelings, also have expressed the fact that you haven't got all the information yet. We need to see just where management recommends we go, where we think we are, if we're really short or not. the state isn't helping us out at all with delays of the budget because we don't know what's going to happen. Even if we anticipate the worst, being level funded to 2019-20, we don't know what the state charges will be, and the number could still be a net negative. So we really need to get that information. We have a better estimate on the free cash, and I think generally we're going to be okay from what I've been hearing, but we don't have all that laid out for us yet. So I think we need to wait before we make any decisions. I do personally tend to think a little more along the lines of Mr. McQuaid than Mr. Slater. These are items that we need for long-term budget stability, and we have the money to do it. We're not spending it on nice-to-haves. We're spending it on things we know we need. Also, most of them are still accessible to us. So if we had problems next year, we could take it from that. Some of those also are, if you're trying to make sure people don't just spend money on nice-to-haves, those things take 2/3 votes to get the money out of those stabilizations. Free cash only takes a majority. So you need to consider everything. And I know you want to do that, but nice discussion tonight, but maybe it's a discussion we need in a couple of weeks, not tonight. And for the information on the Capital Outlay Committee, they're scheduled for October 1st.
Thank you, Bill. Mr. Donnelly?
No, Bill just answered the question. They were floating October 1st, September the 30th, and the 5th. So thank you, Bill, for letting me know it's October the 1st.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Okay, great. This was a good discussion. I firmly believe, and thank you everybody for your input. Tom, any time that you need us to get together to, go over, once you start getting numbers in and that sort of thing, I'm sure you'll let us know and we can get together again on it. All right, so further on down, the only thing left was on the agenda besides the reorganization of the FinCom was state aid update, and you don't have one?
Nope.
Okay, I guess that takes care of that, huh? All right, so now we're up to our annual reorganization of the Finance Commission. This is the time when we move different people into different positions as the chair and the vice chair. So we'd like to get some discussion going here, folks. Anybody want to help me out? I don't want to stay president or chair for forever. Thank you.
Madam Chair, do you want me to ask if there's any nominations for chair?
That would be great.
Are there any nominations for chair?
Mr. Slater.
Thank you. I'd like to nominate Bob Donnelly for chair.
Second,
Okay.
All right, are there any other nominations for chair?
Seeing none.
Hearing none, we're going to do a roll call vote for all in favor for Mr. Donnelly. So you want to do that, Madam Chair?
Sure. Mr. Slater.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Judy.
yes.
I'm a yes. And Mr. Donnelly, I'm supposing that you're going to be a yes.
I'll vote yes.
Okay, great. Unanimous. Thank you.
And, Madam Chair, are we electing a vice chair tonight?
Yes, that was the plan.
Okay, are there any nominations for vice chair?
Judy?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Ann Haley as our vice chair.
Second.
Okay, are there any other nominations for vice chair?
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes.
I'd like to say something here. We know that Ann was chair this year. And you, of course, won't be next year. But I think one of the reasons why the two of you are the best candidates right now for chair and vice chair I believe it was about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, we instituted liaisons to the departments. And Anne was the first liaison to the schools, and she's done a magnificent job. You were also part of that liaison package too, and have other departments that you're doing, but you've also been working with the schools this year as a liaison. And I am very, very happy with the way the relationship has developed with the schools. And I think that we, the FinCom, have, it's been an advantage for us to see what we need to see to make an informed decision. So again, that's all I have to say right now.
So, Mr. Chair, there's the nomination for Mrs. Haley as Vice Chair, and you, Mr. Donnelly, are now the Chair, so please take the roll call vote.
Okay, so we're voting for Vice Chair. The nomination is for Ann Haley. I'll call the roll call. Judy Langone,
Yes.
Alan Slater,
Yes.
Ellie Numi,
Yes.
Ann Haley,
Yes,
and the chair votes yes as well. Congratulations, Ann.
thank you.
Congratulations, Bob.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Ann, yes.
I just wanted to thank everybody for all the help that they've given me over this past year. It's been a kind of a crazy roller coaster of a ride. We had all the money in the world, and then we had none, or thought we had none. We'll see soon. But I thank everybody. Everybody worked hard, and everybody supported me, and I really, really, truly thank you. The other thing is that I do feel honored to work with Bob again this year. I think that we worked well together, and I thank you.
Thank you. And I thank you, Ann, for your term as chair. You're right. It was a challenging year. I think you did a very good job keeping us informed, keeping us on target. And I've learned a lot from you, and as well as those other folks who have acted as chair since I began my terms of office with the FinCom. That includes Alan and Judy, and I thank you as well. Are there any other comments before I go on to speak to some of the other roles and responsibilities that we have to? Yes, Judy.
I just want to say that Ann kept us very busy this year. I didn't physically count the meetings, but it seems like we had a lot more meetings than usual because there was a lot of issues. And so I just want to thank Ann for all her hard work.
Thank you.
Very good. And Judy.
I wanted to say something too about Anne and her leadership and her energy. And we all know that energy really goes fast. And I appreciate her leadership this year and keeping in touch. And I look forward to the upcoming year. And it was an uncharted territory this year. I mean, we thought it was going to be an easy year, and it turned out to be a horror show so far. But we're under control. So, Ann, thank you very much.
Very well. Anyone else before we proceed? Thank you. Well, I just want to also say that this is not my first chance to be a chairman of a town committee. I actually was the first chairman of the personnel board. Bill Plasto will remember that. He and I worked together to establish the board. And on my departure from that particular board, I was given this very nice gavel by the committee members. And I've never used it, and I don't intend to use it tonight, but it's always here for my use just in case. But I thank the board once again for the election to board, and I hope to serve you and the town well in that capacity. There are several other appointments, if you will, in committee designations that, as chair, I should make note of and formally speak to tonight, and I'd like to do that. Judy was mentioning the role of the school liaison, and yes, Ann and I have worked together to serve as liaison to the school. to the school department. Having two people do that role turned out to be a very good mechanism for keeping up with all that was going on with the school department. We worked well together. It was effective for us to work together because the schools have a lot of meetings, and if I was unable to attend, or if Ann was unable to attend, we'd fill each other in. We'd cover for each other in those meetings, and it just was very effective. And given that we are still in a state of flux in terms of, particularly in school spending during the pandemic, it's my recommendation to the committee that Ann and I continue in the capacity of school liaison. That's one assignment I wanted to speak to tonight. The other appointment that I'd like to speak to tonight, there's a couple more. The Finance Commission does have two members who sit on the Budget Balancing Committee. And for this year, I would like to announce that I will sit on the Budget Balancing Committee, as is the traditional role of the chair. And FinCom's second appointment will be Kelly Newmy. Congratulations, Kelly. The Capital Outlay Committee, there is a committee assignment or a committee appointment from the FinCom for Capital Outlay. That is committee that I sat on for FY21. My plan is to, since we are still actually talking about the FY21 Capital Outlay plan this coming October 1st, as Bill indicated earlier, I will continue to serve as liaison for the FinCom. And then after the FY21 Capital Outlay is completed, I'm very pleased to announce that Judy will represent FinCom in that role for Capital Outlay for FY22. Thank you, Judy. And finally, I also want to acknowledge the extreme contributions and the services of Mr. Slater. Alan continues to serve as the chair of the Middle School Building Committee, also as a member of the Cultural Development Committee. The Middle School Building Committee is certainly a topic of great interest to the school committee, and I think that having Alan as the chair and having him as a member of the FinCom is both beneficial to the middle school committee and very beneficial to the FinCom. That's going to be an enormous undertaking financially for us in the coming years. So I want to thank each of you for your stepping up to the plate and assuming and continuing all these very important roles as members of the Finance Commission. Thank you very much. I had listed on the only other, we have gone through the agenda. The only other thing that I thought I'd open it up for discussion, I've made some notes on it. I've listed an agenda item called input from key area of focus for the FinCom. I don't intend to spend a lot of time talking about each of these points, but I thought I would just take you through some of my thinking in terms of the things that I would like the FinCom to focus on in this term, and certainly get your insights and input as well. So very quickly, the bullets that I've listed here are obviously our role as defined by the town charter is to recommend an annual expenditures based on our reasonable revenue projections to town meeting. And that's job number one for us. So obviously, we're going to continue to do our due diligence to meet that goal. Working with town management and the elected boards, we are currently managing with them our financial resources during a very, very important period of time for us, trying to manage our way through the pandemic. We started at annual town meeting with things such as delaying the consideration of our capital outlay recommendations, revising our revenue estimates for department revenue and state aid. And certainly we learned tonight, obviously we didn't learn it, we knew this was the case, but our work in that endeavor continues right into this fall town meeting, which I think over the coming weeks will be our major focus of this commission, will be the plans and the votes that are needed for that particular meeting in November. We did a lot of work last year focusing in on metrics and trends, particularly on the revenue side. I would like us to continue our focus. We got a couple of the trend informations into the budget book, which is great. I'd like us to continue that work at a certain point during the year. Particularly, I would make note of our use of those revenue metrics, particularly as how we measure our revenues going forward. I think that trend work that we started actually is taking on a more important role in this coming year. Alan made this point earlier in our discussions about the spending plan. We need to continue our attention to our reserve levels and our free cash, and assess our needs to continue to build these, and if necessary or if prudent, to help us through the pandemic spending. We need to maintain and improve our credit rating. That is a particular item, I think, of importance to us as we step closer to a project funding of the size of a middle school building project. We have a very good credit rating currently. I still hold out hope that perhaps there's an opportunity for us to improve on that rating in time for us to see some benefit from that when we do go to out to secure a loan credit for that particular project. And finally, I think this is something we should pay attention to as well. We have put forward a long-term financial plan. We did that a couple of years ago, and it was very beneficial to us in assessing our potential for structural deficits, and it was really instrumental in helping us scope out the need for additional revenue to avoid our structural deficit, which ended up with the 2.5 override from 2000. I can't. My mind is going blank on the years now. I guess that was 2019, just a year ago. And I'd just like us to spend some time working with town management and updating their financial plan with new assumptions. I think the assumptions we made a couple years ago need to be revised. Lots of things have changed, and I think that particular plan will help us manage ourselves through not only these very challenging years, but it's also an important plan. I think it helps us monitor our commitments to the override pledge that we made at the time of the 2.5 override, that 5-year pledge in terms of what we would spend, how we would spend it, and how we would try to extend the financial plan out above and beyond the 5-year plan if we manage ourselves effectively financially over the next few years. So those are a couple of things that I was putting on the table, and certainly any input that members want to have, additional things, it's your opportunity to do so now. Wow, that was covered pretty well then. Good.
Actually, it was an excellent job, and I think you hit all of the highlights. Thank you.
Right.
And surely we'll be busy next year.
Good. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Bob, for doing that, and look forward to this upcoming year, and hopefully, we can get the virus under control and move forward.
Very good. Is there any other business folks would like to bring up at this time? The only thing that, and I had a brief conversation with Tony about this. And he certainly is willing to at a future meeting. It's not an urgent business. Tony and Jim Collins did a presentation a couple of weeks ago concerning the Light Department, the financial structure of the Light Department in terms of a longer term need to improve the financials in the Light Department from a structural standpoint, whether it be reserves or stabilization fund, things such as that. I really liked the presentation a lot. We are not the Light Commissioners, but I think we might benefit from seeing some of the thoughts that are being put on the table for financial operations in the Light Department. I found it intriguing, and with the Commission's approval, I'll send an invitation out to Tony. Very good.
That would
is
be
it-
very interesting.
Very
Yes.
good. So with that, I will entertain now a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, with that, I'll go to a roll call vote. Judy Langone,
yes.
Alan Slater,
Yes.
Kelly Numi,
Yes.
and Haley,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. And I will field, I should have mentioned this before we adjourn, but I will field dates and times for a subsequent meeting and agenda items with each of you in the coming days, if that's acceptable.
Yes.
Very good. All right,
Yeah.
folks. Thank you very much again. Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Bob.